Welcome back to Learn English Quickly with Podcast, the podcast that helps you speak English with confidence. I'm your host, Decent.
And I'm Olivia. It's great to have you back with us. In our last episode, we focused on expanding your vocabulary through context and real conversations.
Today, we're diving into a topic that many learners struggle with pronunciation. You can know a ton of words, but if your pronunciation isn't clear, it can really hold you back.
Absolutely. But here's the good news: pronunciation is something you can improve with just a little practice. You don't need to be perfect, but clarity is key.
Right. So let's start with the basics. What makes pronunciation so challenging for learners?
The biggest challenge is the sounds themselves. English has some sounds that don't exist in other languages, and vice versa. Also, stress and intonation can completely change the meaning of a sentence. And let's not forget about rhythm and connected speech.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure. Take the word record. As a noun, you say record, but as a verb, it's record. The stress changes depending on whether it's a noun or a verb. And this can be confusing for learners. Another example is the phrase I can't and I cannot. In casual speech, I can't often becomes I can't. And the difference in sound is huge.
That's a great example. So how do learners tackle this?
One of the best things you can do is to practice minimal pairs. These are pairs of words that sound similar but have different meanings. For example, bit and beat, or ship and sheep. Listening and repeating these helps train your ear to hear the subtle differences.
Interesting. So by working with these small differences, we can improve our ear for the language, right?
Exactly. And don't just listen-repeat after the speaker. Try to mimic their exact sound, rhythm, and stress. It's like learning a new dance move. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. But don't just stop there. Try recording yourself and comparing it to the original.
That's a good idea. So, practice makes perfect. But what about the more natural aspects of pronunciation, like rhythm and intonation?
Great point. English is a stress-timed language, which means some syllables are longer and stressed, while others are shorter and unstressed. This gives English its unique rhythm. For example, think about the sentence, I'm going to the store. When a native speaker says this, it sounds like, I'm going to the store. The toe becomes unstressed, and this pattern happens in everyday speech.
That sounds like something you can practice with podcasts or television shows, right?
Exactly. And a fun exercise is to pick a short segment from a podcast or movie and repeat it like you're a character in that scene. Focus on matching their rhythm, intonation, and stress. This helps you internalize how English sounds naturally.
That's a fun idea. Now, how can we improve our pronunciation outside of just listening and repeating?
A great technique is recording yourself. It's a simple way to identify where you're going wrong. You can listen back and compare your pronunciation with native speakers. Pay close attention to how you pronounce vowels, consonants, and even word endings. These are often areas that cause trouble for learners.
So, when it comes to improving pronunciation, we need to be consistent with our practice. But what if a learner feels self-conscious about their accent?
That's a common concern. But remember, accents are part of who we are. The goal is not to sound like a native speaker, but to be clearly understood. The more you practice, the more natural your accent will become. And a little secret? Accents are often charming.
That's a great way to look at it, focusing on clarity and understanding, not perfection.
Exactly. And speaking of practice, one of the best ways to reinforce pronunciation is by speaking in full sentences. This helps you practice stress, rhythm, and pronunciation all at once. Don't just say a single word in isolation, put it into context. For example, instead of just saying apple, say, I love eating an apple.
So, Don't just practice isolated words, put them into sentences, and try speaking them naturally.
Exactly. And when you're ready, start speaking with others, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. Conversations are the best practice for real-world pronunciation. It's also helpful to keep a conversation journal. After a conversation, jot down any words you found difficult to pronounce. This helps reinforce your learning.
That's a great idea. Now, I want to ask about something that's often overlooked: the connection between body language and pronunciation. Does how we move our mouth or body affect how we speak?
You're right to ask that. Body language can definitely influence pronunciation. For example, when speaking English, it's important to open your mouth wide enough to pronounce certain sounds, like ah or oo. If you're speaking in a hurried or stiff manner, it can affect your clarity. Practice speaking in front of a mirror. Watch how your lips and tongue move.
So body language and mouth movement are important too. Now let's wrap up with a quick pronunciation challenge for our listeners.
Here's your challenge. Pick 5 words you find difficult to pronounce. Record yourself saying them and compare it to a native speaker's version. Practice until you feel more confident. Then, try to say them in a sentence naturally, with the right stress and rhythm.
And remember, pronunciation is a journey, just like fluency. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and don't worry about perfection. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll get.
Exactly. We'll be back soon with more tips on how to improve your speaking skills. Keep up the great work and stay motivated.
Thanks for tuning in to Learn English Quickly with Podcast. Until next time, keep practicing. And remember, your English journey is all about progress, not perfection. Now, let's dive deeper into why stress and intonation are so important. It's not just about saying the right sounds, but also about emphasizing the right parts of words or sentences.
That's right. Stressing the right words in a sentence gives it meaning. For example, I didn't say you stole the money can have several meanings depending on which word you stress. If you stress didn't, you're denying that you said it. Stress say, and you're denying that you said it in the way the listener thinks.
It's incredible how much meaning can shift just with the placement of stress. So how can learners practice this effectively?
A good way to practice stress is to read aloud and emphasize different words to change the meaning of the sentence. This helps develop an ear for what sounds natural.
And what about intonation? How does it tie into stress?
Intonation is the rise and fall of the voice. It's not just about stress, it's about the melody of speech. In English, intonation can indicate emotions, questions, or emphasis. For example, in yes, no questions, the intonation rises at the end. Are you coming to the party? But, in statements, it falls, I am going to the party.
That's interesting. I never realized how much the tone of voice could change the meaning. So, a rising tone can indicate a question, and a falling tone usually signals a statement.
Exactly. And mastering intonation and stress is essential for sounding natural. Native speakers don't just use these elements to communicate meaning. They also use them to express emotions, ask questions, and indicate attitudes.
So, intonation and stress are closely connected to fluency, right? It's not just about getting the words out, but saying them the right way.
Absolutely. The more you practice these aspects, the closer you'll get to sounding like a fluent, natural speaker.
Great. So now we know the importance of stress, intonation, and rhythm. Let's talk about a common barrier to speaking: hesitation.
Yes, hesitation is another factor that holds many learners back. It can be caused by fear of making mistakes or simply not feeling confident in your skills. But hesitation isn't just about nerves, it can also be a result of not practicing enough.
So, hesitation is kind of like a habit that we need to break through consistent practice?
Exactly. The more you speak, the less you'll hesitate. And the key to overcoming hesitation is to practice speaking regularly. Even if you feel uncomfortable at first, you'll notice it gets easier the more you do it.
I guess it's true what they say, practice makes perfect.
It really does. And remember, no one starts off perfect. It's all about building confidence and feeling comfortable with the language. Start small and gradually build up to bigger conversations.
Goodbye, everyone, and we'll see you at episode 4.